Hello and welcome to Personable, a podcast focused on speaking to the world's best, enabling you to become the best that you can be. My name is HarveyBracken-Smith, and today I want to be joined by Mungo McCosh. Mungo is the founder of Mungo TV, which is an incredibly exciting Instagram channel that we'll get into much more detail on very soon. I wanted to ask you, Mungo, to start off, how did your travelling around with your parents as a kid inform what you do on social media? And could you give a little bit of background of what you do on social media? I'm incredibly excited to have you on today.
First of all, thank you very much for having me on. I grew up with parents that not only loved to traveled a lot for work, and grew up in several different countries. So a good way to put it is my parents have never been beach holiday people. They're pretty restless at the best of times, and so, as soon as we'd get some time off, they would decide, okay, let's go and explore abandoned old ruins in eastern Turkey, or let's go to Tbilisi and explore there, etc., etc. And so I think I've always been someone that really likes to get off the beaten track when I travel. I don't like the idea that a travel experience has been curated for me, which it often always has to some extent. But the extent to which I can minimize that and just have a really, really authentic view of a place or a culture or a people is the best for me. So that has influenced Mungo TV in that I have spent the last 2 years really trying to get into the sticks, trying to get to places kind of normally where I'm a bit of an outsider, and often made to feel like a kind of piece of the furniture. Yeah.
How have you gone about that transition from, because obviously we went to school together, going from a place like Eton, which has a lot of traditions, there's a lot of ways in which you're kind of expected to act. And even if you kind of go off that beaten path, as you describe it, what that would mean for a lot of people is still going on nice holidays or doing, as you described to me before doing this podcast, instead of going, to Southeast Asia, you might go somewhere different. But you've not only kind of gone off the beaten path, but you've kind of made your whole brand image around this idea of doing unique experiences. And you've even are now studying in China. So could you talk about that transition from just initially wanting to do something that was different to making that your overall brand image?
I think I've always been someone that I always know quite strongly what I want, at least for phases of the time, and maybe I changed my mind. But I don't think I was ever someone that was going to go down the sort of traditional rat race route. Which is very respectable if you can do it, but I think I wanted to make the most of my early 20s, and the idea was that if I could get to these places, which had always really interested me, as soon as I had the freedom to do so, wanted to do it in a way that was long-term sustainable and make a real thing of it, and also show that to the world that actually it's such a vast place that you're not confined to these slightly cliche destinations that say you're traveling in a certain way. Oh, you have to book a tour guide because such and such place is unsafe. It's on school. I think whilst there was a certain pressure to conform to like several kind of stereotypes or expectations, I think it was also a place that really allowed you to do the very best at exactly what you wanted to do. And why that? Well, obviously at the time it didn't manifest itself. I mean, even in travel, although in the summer of last, I went interrailing with a friend, and that was slightly unheard of, but for someone kind of under 18, but that was absolutely fine. That was kind of what kicked it all off. So yeah, I don't think it was particularly something that I felt restrained me. A lot of other people wanting to do other things. I've just always been someone that's basically done my own thing.
What was that? What made you want to start posting this? I think it's quite different for the point that you and I are at, because I feel like at this point I've done social media for a couple of years and you have as well. And so like the actual fear of posting is not really as much of a fear that goes through our minds. But kind of for the majority of the listeners, just posting their first video on Instagram, on TikTok, whatever it is actually quite a large internal hurdle. And there's one thing to, go and post like little photos on your story, or people might make these like private Instagrams for, Jack and Charlie travel group or whatever. But you actually not only took them as photos, but as reels. So they kind of had the opportunity to go viral. So what was that transition like? Was it just like, did it start off as like a mini like travel private group and then you made it more public? Could you talk a little bit about that process?
So I remember exactly when I started it. It was called, this must have been, I'd like to say November 2023. I'd just done boxing at Edinburgh Student Fight Night, which was a really good experience. That had been my first term at Edinburgh. I'd done 10, 12 weeks of boxing training. I worked quite hard. That was quite time consuming. And that kind of contributed to things in two ways, because one, I needed something else to do after that, after I did the fight, won the fight, thank God. Then also, that was something that weirdly within the Edinburgh community put me and a lot of put a lot of the other fighters as well in the limelight, because social media is a big part of their business model, filming interviews, filming kind of jokes, memes of training, and then obviously 1,200 people attend that event. So I've never been someone that's particularly shy of putting my name out there. But the idea with Mungo TV from that point was, I'm going to start traveling quite soon. I wanted an outlet where I could, initially it was also partly to document my kickboxing training, which I took on after that. And then that was cut because you really need to niche down on Instagram. But I think the idea always from the very beginning was, to be honest, I'm not someone that has any motivation to gain followers for followers' sake. It is nice to know that a certain amount of people take an interest in your travels or whatever you're doing. But there was this long-term motivation that I was not going to be able to travel beyond a certain point to all these places I wanted to, because there were going to be financial and time constraints. However, if I could build this up whilst I traveled for these 2 uni summers, I would eventually be able to make it self-sustaining, and that's what we're hopefully on track to do.
Did you ever find for a minute that it was quite hard when you were gaining all this publicity? I know you mentioned you enjoyed being in the limelight, but being out in Sydney, Australia, there were even some people from Edinburgh here, and they mentioned they knew you as well. And I've kind of had a similar thing at Duke. I think it's not only, doing social media, but, what you did with the fight night at Edinburgh and, what I tried to do at Duke with rugby. Even if you do something that's important to a particular community, you're kind of known, the image of you is known to a selection of people, whether or not they know you as much. So how did you navigate the emotions of dealing with, you're trying to, entering a university for the first time and to, make friends and to fit in and to, build up your own image there, while 1,200 people or more have kind of got their own image of what you're like. And I'm sure you've got that even more so with like 40,000 followers now on Instagram. But yeah, so building up your own sense of self alongside other people having their image of you.
It's interesting. I pride myself on, now obviously if there's a video which is obviously a satire, this is not the case, but I pride myself on the fact that I try and make my Instagram as authentic to who I am as possible. And anyone who knows me very well, who sees me in a video or I'm vlogging something, will say, yeah, that's Mungo in real life. He's not putting on a character. He's just being him. It was interesting. So now, as of today, 55,000 followers. It's been interesting. There's been the occasional sort of awkward moment where I get recognized now occasionally. Not kind of randomly on the street, but if I'm in a community, odds on a lot of people will follow me from. So, for example, at Fudan University, where I am in China right now, a lot of the international students follow me because if they come from the UK, the US, Germany, wherever, they're likely to see Instagram content about other foreigners in China and their experience and explaining things and showing things. So that's like often a large part of my demographic. So I've been recognized a couple times by other international students. It happened to me on the metro the other day, which is strange. I don't love it. I don't hate it. I just always make a real effort to be like I'm just a dude. I'm your age. Like, let's go get a pint, as opposed to like, oh, I love your stuff. As well. I'm an idiot who makes videos instead of doing my homework sometimes. There's no like fan thing here. But it was interesting. I think if you're starting out on social media, you really just have to bite that bullet, because I remember, whilst I didn't find it difficult initially putting reels out, it took a lot of time, even for me, and I'm quite confident on camera and stuff, to start filming my own face and then talking to my camera, etc. And that's just a wall you have to break through. It's just a barrier to entry, I would say. And you inevitably get better at talking to camera, and you inevitably become much more comfortable with the sound of your own voice. It's one of these human things. We don't like the sounds of our own voice, but you just get better. As I've said to a lot of people who like want to start. They're like, oh, what would you recommend? And I basically tell them it's like playing the piano, or whatever. It's like any skill. There's no wizardry to it. If you do it consistency for long enough, and every time you do something, you look at the results and you try and improve a little thing, you will get better over a year or 2 years or even a month. It's genuinely just a pretty linear progression with potentially exponential results on social media. So yeah, it's just, you've got to take that leap and then crack on and then stay consistent. And yeah, no one will be taking the piss anymore when you're at 50, like, I don't know, what, 50,000 followers. I made it, but like, as soon as you start to grow, they start to see it. Oh, okay. Yeah.
What have you found to be your sort of process with video ideas? Because I'm sure that when you started, or a presumption that I think that when you started is that you would have kind of just like taken random videos or kind of like made a day in the life on your travels. But when you do something for so long, it goes from the point of just pure motivation to an actual framework and a discipline behind it. Could you talk to me a bit about your framework from the idea of, coming up with ideas to how many times you film a week, how far ahead you plan videos, and what your process looks like from jotting down an idea to filming, editing, and posting it?
I'm going to give you a slightly unsatisfactory answer, because it's still for me all rather sporadic. So I've got some things where, for example, in 2, 3 weeks' time, I know where I'll be, and I know I'll be able to get a YouTube video, maybe a half hour or 20-minute YouTube videos in that area of China. I'm thinking ahead to that, and I'm looking at sort of stuff about that, what else has been made on that topic online. And if I think of good videos or see a good video which I could adapt sort of tactfully or whatever, that's being just written down as a note. That's just a checklist. But then on a day-to-day basis, like, I like to have a couple like trial reels. I don't know if you've used those. They're a really powerful tool, right? They've actually really changed the game and made it a lot easier for people like us, especially to reach new audiences. So I like to always have like quite a few of them on the go, so that if I come back from uni, I kind of do them in batches. Sometimes I sit down and have a moment. Oh, I have these clips. Okay, what could I caption them with? Or even, I've heard this audio. What would be funny to do with that? It's all quite haphazard, but I like to have a lot of trial reels on the go, and I see how they've done, and then that evening, I've also got to negate the time difference. So I'm 8 hours ahead of the UK. Am I? Is that true? Yes. Which means that if I post at a reasonable time for me, let's say midday, when I'm on like between classes or whatever, everyone in the UK is going to be in bed. Nobody is going to be on their phone, and if they are, they're an idiot. So that's going to like ruin the engagement initially. So it is quite a sporadic process. It's sometimes I do kind of plan a video. Sometimes I know what's going to do well. Sometimes I really don't. This video, which has almost done too well for my liking, this video called basically me saying I was pretending to be effectively a Chinese old man drinking a Qingdao and having a Chinese cigarette. And the caption was something along the lines of like, the new genre of performative male just dropped, whatever, like Chinese white boy or whatever. And I remember making that on the loo because I was being lazy, because I had a couple clips I'd made yesterday. I didn't want to give it much thought, and it's effectively brain rot. And now it's got like 10.2 million views. I think it gained me 15,000 followers on its own. So like, that was insane. I also think I slightly let the cat out of the bag. It's kind of slightly at Pandora's box, because would I rather the video that got that many views and reached that many people be one of me drinking beer and smoking and pretending to be Chinese? I mean, it's all satire, obviously. I would rather it be me being intelligent talking about some topic, but that's often the way with these things. But the point is, that was an entirely sporadic. I probably made that in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And then those videos I spent an hour editing, and again, 20,000 views. That's all right. That's, I'd like to think I like every video I put out.
How do you go about balancing actually, let me rephrase that. How do you go about making comedic content? Because a lot of people think they're funny, and then there's a lot of comedians who are funny but have different ways about putting out comedy. Like, I found a lot of the things that you do that are comedic are sort of just like random bits of text, and it's just like a funny twist or something at the end. Like there was one of like you and a horse, for example. I can't remember exactly what the text said, but it was just like very random. Like, how do you go about that process of like putting text on a screen, and what do you think you're doing? Is it just that you're in such a crazy location? Like, what makes it funny, but what also makes it viral in those, single text clips?
I think so. With the specific reel you're looking at, that's actually the biggest reel I've ever done in terms of just views. The idea was, remember, there was this whole this trend of raw dogging flights, or it's an awful word, but raw dogging anything.
Could you explain what that is for the listeners who might not know?
So I think it has originally rather explicit connotations, but it's been taken out of context and repackaged as raw dogging a flight is to get on a plane. Let's say you have an 8-hour flight. People would film themselves saying, raw dogging an 8-hour flight between here and here, not allowing myself any water, not allowing myself any in-flight entertainment, no headphones, no book. I'm just going to stare like that ahead of the screen. I'm just going to sit down. It's a kind of play on potentially how cooked our generation's attention spans are with so much brain rot, and which is ironic, it being an internet meme. And so I saw this and I thought some of these videos are doing quite well. So I thought, okay, it was during the summer. Everyone had just got back from summer holiday. And I thought, again, actually a slightly lazy moment where I just had this clip of me in Mongolia on a horse. I posted a thing saying, just raw dogged a lad's holiday to Ibiza. No drinks, no food, no music, no lads, no Ibiza. Then in brackets, I'm in Mongolia and I'm turning increasingly schizophrenic. And it was funny. I found it funny when I made it. I was like, okay, it's kind of, it just builds up, no snacks, no drinks, while he's raw dogged a lad holiday to Ibiza. Also, why is he on a horse? And then next, oh, no music. What's he doing in Ibiza? No lads. Why is he on his own on a lad's holiday? No Ibiza. Oh, he's not even in Ibiza, so he's really raw dogged. It's like there's nothing. And then, he's lost in Mongolia. Why the hell is he in Mongolia? And I think that combination, I use brackets as quite a powerful tool because you can say two things at once. It shows vulnerability. You can relate to people. You can put quite a good punchline in for people to notice kind of they read it in two sections. I was really proud. Chris Williamson reposted that reel to his story, which...
Really? Chris Williamson? Did he follow you?
He doesn't. I wish he would. I was just like, whoa. So like Joe Rogan saw my reel. That stuff, I was like, okay, that's cool. Like, this made Chris Williamson laugh enough that he posted the reel to his story. Like, that's sick. I don't know. It's a thing of, I'm pretty chronically online. It's not amazing. I'm on Instagram a lot, which you'd probably expect. I post Instagram content every day. I'm pretty active on there. And so I'd like to think I'm quite clued into what people of our generation are finding funny. What's the kind of trending meme or whatever of the time. I'm not particularly a pop culture person. I'm not sort of a celebrity follower. I'd never, not a Love Island or Kardashians person. Keeping rough track of what's going on in the news, proposed celebrities or even politics, is important, and then it's just how can I riff off that sometimes. Stuff like we were having hot pot the other day, me and some mates. I thought, okay, why don't I film a video of hot pot? It's very easy because everything here is content for people who don't live here. Me and my friends had this joke about Chinese hot pot where you get your food, you dip it in, and then you hold it in. Sometimes someone's dropped something, and then after about 2 hours, you sat there, you're really bloated. You're kind of trying to force out more food, and it's getting lost. And you start pulling random things out. I can't tell what that is. And we've always had this joke of like the things you find at the bottom of the hot pot. So there was this joke. It was quite topical at the time. It still is. What are we going to find at the bottom of the hot pot? What's this? It's the Epstein list. Stuff like that. It's just like a really stupid joke. Or as bad as like Malaysia Airlines flight. Kind of slightly off color, but you can, these fusions of just like, to be honest, I'm just making jokes I make to my friends, and I manage to make them laugh. And so if I can just remove that entirely from in-jokes to stuff that just generally makes them laugh, that's good. But there's no particular theory to it. I guess keeping on top of flatmates got up. And yeah, there's no kind of theory to it, to be honest.
Well, something that I find interesting, and maybe you can help me with this a little bit, is, and I'm going to give another example as to why this is important and then go into this specific point. But I was speaking to a guy called Peter Wood the other day who's got like 20 to 30,000 followers on LinkedIn, which is quite a lot for LinkedIn, and he's like a LinkedIn top voice. And I had him on the podcast the other day. It's not actually been posted yet because he's got an exciting announcement. So listeners of Personable, you'll hear that soon. But what he was saying is it's better to basically like produce content. I'm butchering the example, but basically to produce content where like it's like planting a seed in a desert versus planting a seed where a load of rain's going to happen is essentially what he's trying to say. And like if you're trying to think of a topic or idea that you find interesting, but the rest of the like news cycle and media isn't looking at, like it's going to be very hard to build that up. But if like if the attention is already somewhere, it's going to be very easy to build it up. So with your like example of you on a horse in Mongolia and drawing that to the current meme, or even with the hot pot, or as you talked about with like celebrity gossip or politics, so like Trump and Xi Jinping are going to meet soon, so like something to do with that, or like the news cycle is going to be looking at those things, and so that when people go on Instagram, etc., you know, they're going to find those sort of topics interesting. But sort of on that point, something that's quite interesting to me is, and also with yourself, is I feel like we kind of have these like timeless lessons or things that we learn that aren't particularly just pertaining to the current news cycle, but would be interesting to you. You know, for example, what was your time at Eton like would be like something that you could talk about in 50 years, right? So when you have kind of like timeless, interesting takeaways or things that aren't currently being talked about in the news cycle, how do you go about linking those topics to the news cycle to take something you find interesting to also add that into the wave of what's going on at the moment in the news?
I think it's interesting. It's a good question. So I think one of my timeless takeaways so far is that China's pretty misunderstood. I'll immediately caveat this by saying most days I get several comments saying CCP propaganda, they're paying him, or more Chinese propaganda, I'm seeing so much these days. My God, I wish they were paying me. No, I'm doing this shit for free. So I'm doing this for free for them. And so I find that funny. So I'm normally pretty positive about China. I would be stupid, you guys are aware of the political situation here, to come here and be completely negative, because I'd rather not get deported. That is just a reality here. And if I made too big of a splash, even though they don't do Instagram here, that would be stupid. So I'm not going to pick fights with, you know, much, much, much bigger fish when I'm more like blue whales when I'm krill. But to be fair, I have really liked living here and it's left a really positive impression on me. And I think it's very misrepresented by the Western media. So that's like I guess not a timeless lesson, but quite a sort of enduring lesson from the last couple of years that, first of all, exactly what media, which we've always been brought up to regard as free and unbiased and of good quality, is not necessarily the reality on the ground. And how could it be if you come to a place? How is someone in an office somewhere in central London with a laptop who hasn't been to that place going to write a New York article? I've been misquoted by the Daily Star about China. A couple other outlets, I have friends who've been misquoted entirely by the Daily Mail. And there's no way to hold them to account. It's not worthwhile either. So that's one thing. So to better answer your question, if I have this kind of long-standing belief, as I actually, to be honest, quality of life for regular people in China, or at the very, very least, for a young expat student from the UK, is far superior to the average person if you're kind of middle class in the UK, because you can afford to go out and eat for every meal. I haven't cooked once here, because meals cost me about £2 a pop, and they're much better. And if I were to cook it, it'd only be Asian ingredients, and I'd be an idiot for thinking I could make better Chinese food than the man downstairs making brilliant noodles or brilliant rice. There's these kind of beliefs like that I've developed and things I've picked up and observed that then I try and translate either through kind of comedic comedic means, or more kind of journalistic, sort of slightly more kind of blogging, or even stories. There's a lot of ways you can reach people on Instagram, and that, I guess, grows twofold. Half of it is people who have had a similar experience and haven't been able to express it and said, oh, this guy's put it really well. When I lived in China, I loved this. Or it's people that want to go and they feel relieved and, oh, actually, you know what, that doesn't look like the North Korea it's painted to be, or whatever. And there are many things like that. People relate, often there's a lot of people out there online that relate to what you're saying, easily bought over if you propose a good argument. They just maybe haven't heard something put in a particular way before. And they are there. And social media is a miracle. You're able to find them more easily than any other time in human history. So yeah, these truths, I have always believed in getting off the beaten track. I don't like tourist sites. I don't like tours. I like to really try and have as much autonomy and get into the middle of nowhere, and that's always been my belief. I think that also there are similar people online, and so my contact is getting to them. Or there's also people that travel a bit or are less experienced with travel, and they might well go and do a 12-day tour of Thailand. And by the way, why not? What fun. But they might see, who's this nutter?
Just to add on to that, right? Because so you've been doing content, even though you mentioned me doing it sporadically, you've been doing it for 2 years. So actually the frameworks in which you put it, the text used, the audio, the try reels, how you think of ideas, how you go about getting a piece of knowledge and putting that online for people to see and to share, have become second nature to you in a sense. In that, for you, it's as simple as, what's an idea? What's the framework where I put it on? How do I post it? How does it represent? This is how people relate to it, right? But there are probably, you might not realize this, and as much as social media can be linear if you're good at iterating and stuff, there's probably about 100 times the number of you who haven't grown because they're not good at coming up with ideas. They're not filming videos or things that are interesting enough. They're not saying interesting things, right? But I feel like every human has some form of experience or interesting thing that they do. So whether it be like for you, your experience in China in terms of finding and meeting great people, your meals only costing the equivalent of £2, not having to cook, being able to experience cool cultures, right? I'm sure that if a lot of other people went to China or another country, they'd be able to experience that as well. But what I think you're good at that other people aren't, which I want to like dissect a little bit, is how you actually go about putting that in a framework to represent that. I mean, even myself, right? Like I feel like I have a lot of good insights, but I'm terrible at like putting it into a reel that's like visually appealing, the right sort of length, getting rid of excess jargon, staying close to the point. So I mean, like you have a good idea, it can be any timeless lesson with regard to China or anything. And what's the framework to put it on in terms of length of text, visual, audio? I mean, whatever it is. Like, do you think there is a framework in your head that you're putting it in that makes stuff more interesting to people?
I think I've learned a lot about the platform, and I'm doing that again with YouTube now. That's what I'm starting, and that's my next sort of battle. Um, I have definitely learned a lot more about the mechanics of Instagram, basic principles like, I don't know, it's in the interest of the quote algorithm, which is a good way to summarize lots of algorithms, lots of code, lots of clever engineering they've done. It's in the interest of said algorithm, it's in Instagram's interest to keep people on the app for as long as possible. That's something I understood quite early. I mean, before starting content, because it's a business at the end of the day, and if there's no obvious product that you're paying for, you are the product, right? As in all things. So there's that. And it's like, how do you do that? For example, an 8-second video that's looping, and someone's likely to show it to their friends, and it will play it 10 times. That's going to give you 10 times as many views, or more than the same video looping, but you've posted it as a 1-minute reel. It's not going to count for as many views. There are lots of mechanical things that you learn. And I would say content it's never been so easy and so democratized for anybody on earth with access to the internet and Instagram, the camera, to reach so many people. And now, it's not really, really easy, but even if you don't know how to edit an Instagram reel, or even if you don't know how to make a YouTube video, you can go onto YouTube and someone's made a video on how to do that. Or there are blogs saying, this is how the Instagram algorithm works roughly to our understanding. This is what a trial reel does. All the information is available, and it's all made to be intuitive for human use. Software that's mostly designed to be used on your phone in the same way you did use any other. So then your challenge is, once you've not mastered even, just got to grips with the mechanics of the software itself. How do you master what's going to do well, the strategy, whatever? And I think it sounds overly simplistic, just focus on making better videos. Initially, don't worry about this is going to do a certain amount of views. Just like if I make a video, there's times I make a video and I think it's funny, and I literally made it because I wanted to make it and I thought it'd be funny. Sometimes it bombs. Sometimes like no one gets it. It's actually too niche. It's just like this is weird. I sometimes do a stupid thing like I make some meme related to the Mongol Empire and Premier League football. I would say that's far too niche. And like maybe it might get 100k views, which is still good. And for those people, they've hit a gold mine because they happen to be interested in the Mongol Empire and Premier League football. It's quite niche, but I've made that because I enjoyed it. That's a really strange example, but that like just showing how niche you can get. But like any rational person would look at that and say that's never going to do views, which is probably right, and it's probably something I need to work out of my game. It's more to illustrate that if I like a video and I find it funny, I put it out there, and the chances are, based off the experience of the last 2 years, other people like it too. That doesn't necessarily always translate to, that doesn't apply only to the type of videos I make. For example, for you, like clipping your reels in a certain way, it applies to, getting the production quality right, picking the right bit of your podcast, and getting the timing right, making sure you've got like really good bits of kind of wisdom that are shareable in there. Yeah, it is in a way as simple as just make better videos, which is obviously a massive oversimplification, but it's quite a good way to look at it. And if you like what you're putting out, that's a really important part of it, I'd say.
Yeah, I actually think you've kind of like hit the nail on the head there in terms of, translating into simple wisdom. Because I find that, even to myself and for the majority of people listening, when they go and post a video, like, sure, there is that kind of lottery ticket element to it, in that sort of anything you post has the potential to go viral.
It's a good way to put
it. We go on Instagram every day and we see these like wacky videos or like shitty film videos, and some do really well. But if you actually think about how many pieces of content you go about consuming in a day, out of that 100 or 200 or whatever it is, depending on how much brain rot you consume, a lot of it is actually really well produced and well made. And so, as Mungo says, like, if you actually just focus on whatever your niche is, if you focus on creating really good videos on that niche that you enjoy watching, and you look at that and be like, oh, I stuttered there, or oh, the lighting wasn't good there, or oh, it got a bit boring at the 7th second or whatever, that's when you can go about improving it. To what extent, you mentioned earlier that having a niche was really important. Could you talk a bit about how you focused on getting a niche, why it's important, and for those that don't have a niche, whether you think it's a necessity or if people can have a broad interest in topics?
I was just about to come on to that, where
Read your mind.
there's a sort of paradox with this, where in a way, the smaller your niche and the more focused you are, the bigger you'll be, at least initially. And so, for example, there are people that have 500,000 followers. All they do is they buy really big bits of meat and they make an amazing steak and they film it. I mean, the viewer doesn't even get to eat the steak. It's a scam. They just see a juicy steak and they kind of, they're at the work and like, oh, God, that would be good, wouldn't it? But they love it, right? And that's all they do.
Yeah.
And that was a struggle for me initially, Oh, I'm going to film my boxing training, and I'm going to go traveling, and I'm going to post other stuff from my lifestyle and whatever. And I mean, that was just stupid, because people that follow me for boxing probably don't care about traveling in China. They might. More importantly, people that care about me traveling in China and Mongolia, etc., don't care about boxing. So niche is very important. Even as soon as I got here, I changed my name on Instagram. So obviously, the username itself is Mungo TV, and then my name is Mungo McCosh, and I added a second part, which is, I think it's just like a straight line and then China travel. And that means that people see a video, they click on my thing, they see exactly what I do, they know what they're getting. And I wish I'd done that sooner, to be honest. Although I was Central Asia before, and probably after this year I'll change it back to something like world travel or Asia travel or whatever. So yeah, it is crucial. I would say you have to have real faith in yourself and your own personality to build without a niche, because you have to assume that, for example, you have to effectively say to yourself, people are going to have real interest in whatever I do, literally whatever I do, and they like me for me. So if I go and go karting, or if I sit by the beach, or if I'm reading a book, or if I'm cooking, they still want to. Now, if you're incredibly funny or incredibly good looking, you might
Oh,
have
thank
some
you.
luck.
Thank you for that.
You're incredibly funny and incredibly good looking. You can have that for free, yeah. But subscribe to Personable on all platforms.
Bang. Wow, this. Look at this. Bang. Perfect.
But yeah, you have to have real kind of ego, and it normally doesn't work for people. Now, if you are, let's say, Madison Beer, that helps. But yeah, find a niche, literally find one thing and then just repeat it. And if people see one reel and then they like it, but they swipe past, if they see it again and they send it to a friend, if they see the same reel again but slightly different, but effectively the same template, you doing the same thing, send it to me again, they like it's funny. You become known for one thing. I'm trying to think what other good examples. There's an
Okay.
Italian granddad with like loads of followers. There's an Italian granddad with loads of followers, and all he does is just talk about how much he loves Jägermeister. I mean, he must have 500,000, a million followers. He's probably getting sent free Jaeger now. That's cool. I mean, you can really do one thing and one thing well, and then it's like, how do you monetize that? That's a certain thing.
Yeah, it reminds me of like the guy that goes and asks like what do you do for a living, and then like let's see your apartment, what are you wearing today, and then there's also like the guy that asks like millionaires what they do, and like thinking about it, like they probably have so many other interests and things in their lives
Oh
that
yeah,
they're kind of, like stuck to it. Someone actually messaged me the other day because I was talking about this very thing, and he was saying like. So he was interested in like law, right? I'm not interested in law, but he was like, I'm really interested in law. And for a couple of months, he like posted these newsletters about just like what he learned in law, and it kind of grew like a little bit. And then he focused on like a very specific part of like corporate law. And then within 3 weeks, he gained like 165 subscribers to his
really.
newsletter. Going from 0 to like 160 is quite a lot. So it's very much like when you niche down. It's actually quite a popular thing in like startups as well. Like the idea of like 1,000 fans, like instead of having a million people that are kind of interested in what you do, have like 1,000
Yeah,
like people who will tell all their friends and family about you, be really invested in what you do. I think that's definitely something that I've struggled with. Less so with the main podcast, like I feel like I'm quite good at like that bit, but more so the short form I'm trying to learn is the very like niching down. But I also think that something that I'm lacking in my own content is like I don't think what I'm putting out is like good, if you know what I mean. Like I think I could like make stuff better. Like I've seen people, you know, that will do like similar things like talking videos or even like share their life, as you said, that aren't good looking and aren't funny, but just have a really good like storytelling ability or really good way of like showing visual effects or saying stuff without fluff. Like I definitely think there is like an art to creating videos in that when you're consuming things, the more that we say but if, have bad lighting, have bad things, it kind of takes people out of this trance and back into the real world, which takes you out of your like real watching and more like in real life. And that's not really
yeah,
what people of Instagram want.
yeah. It is certainly interesting. I mean, yeah, as soon as the niche thing is so important, and also just the production quality thing is important, especially for you, because your content is effectively, I know you're dealing with serious professionals, and you have this kind of smart put together image. For example, if I film a video of like a night, doesn't matter if the footage at 4 a.m. is really blurry and the sound is terrible. It is really interesting. I mean, there's like random dudes in villages in India who occasionally get 18 million view reel just because it's so funny or whatever. You know, it is a lottery. I think the kind of slot machine analogy, the lottery ticket, is a really good way to put it. I hadn't thought of it like that before, but you put a bit of content out, and I'm sure you've seen with the trial reel, you've posted the same exact reel as a trial, maybe twice, and once it's done 100,000 and once it's done 20 views, and you have no idea. It's just a lottery a lot of the time.
No, I
Yeah.
actually need to pick up the try reels a bit more. It's funny, it's actually my so I feel like long form content, I mean, as you'll learn and we can chat more about this another time, I actually find like, of course, there is like the degree of virality and making a good video, but I also think there's a degree to which you kind of have to create that cult-like following, have to be consistent, have to
Yeah.
like get people from one video to the next,
No, it's
because
a
in
much
order
harder game.
it's hard again because, you know, this, right, we've talked for 47 minutes already, right? It's not a 10-second clip. So 10-second clip, you can kind of watch that without knowing,
Yeah.
but like to get through a video kind of takes a lot more in it. But my younger brother started a sort of like Instagram reel thing, and he was like, Harvey, like I'm going to spend a lot of time on the story. All my clips have to be perfect, everything. I was like, all right, let's see it. He puts out his first video, gets like 100K views on both platforms.
Really?
Meanwhile, I'm here, yeah, and I'm here on the other side, and I'm like bad at reels, getting like a couple hundred. And then so he a couple months ago, I actually should do this. It's kind of stupid that I haven't. He helped me to like spend a lot of time like on one video, and I made like a about me video, and it was just kind of like good lighting, good camera, kind of like the script was just very, it's like, hi, my name's HarveyBracken-Smith. I went to Eton, I went to Duke, I'm going to Goldman Sachs. It was like 20 seconds or something like that, and like had images pop up, and it got like 30,000 views or something like that, which for me
Yeah.
is like
No,
infinitely
that's
more.
good. It's good numbers. It's a lot of people.
Exactly. So kind of the point is it kind of shows your element of like just make good videos, because if you just put out crap, like it's going to reward you in that way. Just
Yeah.
in the because we haven't got like that long left, I wanted to ask you a little bit about like the jokes you make, and then ask you a bit more about China. So like your jokes, right? Like I feel like behind the scenes, a lot of the jokes you make are very funny. Like I'm sure like the majority of people, I mean like 18 million people, for example, have watched one of your videos. That includes a lot of like business professionals, that includes even like HR people. You know, there's a lot of people that will watch those videos and think that's absolutely hilarious. But like,
Yeah.
were those jokes made in an office setting or on the average person's social media, let alone something like LinkedIn? You know, that would be like very frowned upon, because like we're not only in an era now where what you say is kind of permanently online, but also particularly around like 2020, 2021, be 2025 now, so a few years after, we had a big rise in like cancel culture. And so like what people said, we kind of saw people being removed from their roles. And so like that sort of freedom of speech was allowed in private settings, but public settings, people have been a lot wary, because you could have a tweet from 2008 and be cancelled for it. So that's why
Yeah.
people have been much more like refraining against it. Obviously, you've got people like the sidemen who kind of like do whatever they want, and someone like KSI has like laughed at outrageous jokes, but because of his fame, it's kind of doesn't matter. So how do you balance like making more extreme jokes that a lot of people will find funny behind the scenes but wouldn't post online, with regard to your overall image for the future, with regard to if this doesn't work out, getting like other more corporate jobs? How does that sort of the joke making evolve your thinking? And also, do you think the rest of the world should be like lighten up and like be more willing to actually view things as satire and to make jokes?
I think, first of all, I'm looking forward to the first time that HR find my jokes so funny they want to hear it in person. It's an interesting one. So I'm kind of, according to PSHE lessons and kind of career services at school and all that, I am slightly committing suicide. I mean, I'm not putting out incredibly racist content or doing like really stupid stuff or stuff that's like very, very illegal. That would be stupid. That would not do me any favors. But I'm putting out the occasional slightly touchy joke on a touchy subject because fundamentally I believe in freedom of speech, and I also think it's very important to tackle things with humor. I think it's like in bad situations, it's the last thing you have left. Like it's why it's like look at Mel Brooks, for example. His film's brilliant. New York Jewish guy spent his whole life taking the piss out of Nazis. Really important, because as soon as you ridicule someone like Hitler, it kind of diminishes them. It's important. It's very important to be able to take the piss out of yourself. I mean, a lot of my jokes are at the expense of Brits, but yeah, it is an interesting one where as a potential future employer of mine, seeing my reels, yes, probably. Am I potentially less likely to get some jobs because of videos I've put out? Probably yes. And I'm actually contending with that at the moment. I'm thinking, okay, well, if this doesn't work out, I mean, the plan is to hopefully grow this to an extent, kind of 2 or 3-fold, and find a proper way to monetize it sustainably, whereby I can continue for a while. And then I've also got to think like exit, because I'm not going to be the energy to travel full time until I'm 30, let's say, or after I'm 30, maybe. But providing I were to go into a sort of job. I mean, to be honest, I know now I'm not going to go for an internship at, say, Goldman Sachs and go through that process. In some ways, I'm too lazy. I mean, that's like, by the way, congratulations, it's really impressive.
Thank you.
It's something I know I wouldn't be able to do as well as anyone, a lot of other people, someone like you, because I probably wouldn't be as diligent in that thing because other things interest me more. I mean, it's an amazing thing. Yeah, so I don't know if I'm going to go down a route that traditional. I'm not going to be a lawyer. If I eventually wind up being a politician, which I doubt, I think you can look back and say a lot of what I said was in satire. I mean, you have Donald Trump saying far worse stuff as president of the United States, weirdly, and he's not really joking. So I guess that's reassuring. well, in a really twisted way for at least people saying silly things on the internet. It's really scary for everything else, but it's a funny thing to contend with. I don't know exactly how to answer that because I just have a fundamental belief in you should be able to say whatever you want, and if I can make a joke at a French person's expense, not even expense. I think if I can take the piss a bit out of the French, I should be able to take the piss out of the Chinese because they take the piss out of us. I think it's very important. We should all mutually be able to laugh together. Like if I go to a pool hall, and then I like mess up a shop and I swear in Chinese, it cracks them up. They love it. And then also if I hear someone on the next door table, you'll probably give it back and shout the F word in a really kind of Chinese accent. And that's funny. That's us sharing a little bit, like, it's showing a bit of weakness, but it's also taking the piss out of each other. You can build connections with that. So yeah, I think, there are some jokes that don't make people laugh. I think, to be honest, if it's funnier than it is offensive, it's creating more net good in the world. And also you can tell it's satire because it's funnier than it is offensive. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely think there's a balance to strike. I think for like my own career, I think it's probably something I'm not going to touch as much just because
No, of
I'm
course.
trying to go into like highly regulated industries and like I kind of have that kind of image that I want to have. But I also like it's just not really something I personally want to do. But the thing I would say as a caveat to that is this isn't just my circles, so I don't want anyone listening just to think that, the people I'm hanging out with. But I would say that a large majority of Gen Z and every generation, there are a lot of things that people say, but also people say that they don't mean in the moment. So there's both like the jokes people will say, but then there's also a category of like things that people will say that they don't
Yeah.
mean. And I think on the internet, we're kind of like, all right, so in every other facet of your life, you start a business, you fail, you can start a new one. You're in school, you get a bad grade, you can do a new one. But in this social media world, if you make a bad video and it doesn't get views, you can make a new one. But it's sort of like if you get caught out saying the wrong thing, and the wrong thing isn't just like obviously racist stuff, like that's a bad thing, like don't do that. But even things on like that might be acceptable at one point in time, but not in the future, in a constantly evolving world of like morals and stuff, it's a very like hard and like confusing line that people are on, particularly as you have like people that are richer and more higher up have more of a say. So people like Donald Trump or like AOC or like Bernie Sanders or Bill Ackman, because they're already at points of influence, they can kind of say whatever they want. Whereas people lower down, if they don't say something that doesn't fit the mold of the point in time, they can be
Yeah.
fired from their job. They can be, even in the UK with the Labour Party, there's been a lot of reports of like people are going against free speech for tweets that people post online. So this is very like blurred lines. So I think like the extent to which you're doing stuff for humor is very interesting. But I also think that as a society, we've kind of got it wrong at the moment because I think that
I agree.
people are too extreme over like what's being said, particularly as people say it in private. I was actually on, wasn't sure if I was going to share this. I was actually on a plane a couple of weeks ago. I was seeing my girlfriend at Duke, so visiting from Sydney, and I was on a flight and I got sat next to an HR lady. Obviously, I'm not going to say which company, and she was just like unbelievably rude to me. Like,
Really?
kept making like jokes about like my looks and like I'm 21 and she was like 35 or something like that. Kept being like extremely like inappropriate towards me. Was like drunk and disorderly on the plane, like being a nuisance to everyone around her. Even ended up pouring her wine all over my clothes, so I ruined
It's a
like
bit
my
crap.
feet were like soaking wet. The
Oh,
reason I
no.
say that is it's like she's in a position of power. I didn't want to report it because I'm not going to try and ruin someone's life over like a little incident, but that's what happens. So there's a somewhat irony
Yeah.
to like it was the HR lady doing a bad thing to me, but I just think that
And,
like go
well, it's this funny thing, or as Brits, like there's almost a sort of quite ironic element to is she an HR lady because she gives people a lot of shit, which I don't know. She says a lot of things to people that she thinks are funny, they don't find they're funny, and then she can't take it in return. She's put herself in the high fortress and the battlements pouring boiling hot oil or
on.
wine.
Yeah, it's
But
just such like but like the reason I say that point is like actually I'm not gonna lie, I was actually really uncomfortable in that time. Like not jokes aside,
yeah,
like that 2 hour flight was very uncomfortable. I'm like a kid sat next to this like older, like more powerful lady, got a girlfriend, like she's being really weird and like not stopping and like kind of like, I've traveled like 24 hours from Australia, right? So I'm just like
you're not in the
unbelievably
mood either.
but like the point is to say that like I have been on the other end of like not nicer things saying, and it's not about not calling things out or not doing things like that, but it's to say that like I don't want to ruin her whole career over an incident that happens. I understand mistakes happen. I understand that people have bad days, and I think that same thing needs to be taken to social media. There's obviously a line of like no return, but I think there's a lot of things right now that like are within the point of return in ordinary life, but on social media life are kind of being used as a stamp of disapproval.
I guess there's one thing I'd add to that is I guess it's very hard. Well, it's much harder to translate the exact meaning of something and whether it's ironic or whatever in the tone of the text than it is you and I talking. If I sent you a message, I don't know, there's numerous ways you can't gauge the tonality of someone speaking or whatever just through text. So if I post a video out there covered in text, I mean, I like to think people would always see, oh, very clearly, this is satire, or he's just trying to say something roughly intelligent. But I guess people misunderstand it. There's also the concept of rage bait, which I'm really guilty of leaning into. I do stuff deliberately.
Explain that for the listeners as well.
Yes, okay, so rage bait, it's a funny term. The idea is that you make content that will deliberately infuriate people, so that then they basically get into a sort of turf war in your comments, which drives your engagement up. They send it to someone and say, "Oh, look at what this idiot is saying." They reply, "Oh no, you've completely misunderstood this." And there are ways you can create a sort of content, sort of gold mine really. So the other day I was with some friends. We went to Chinese fake Paris, a place called Tianducheng, where they have their own Eiffel Tower and all the blocks of flats are built like Parisian apartments. We filmed a video, and I have a French passport. Some of my best friends are French. Obviously, I don't hate French people, but as part of the video, I said, "Oh my gosh, it's Paris and there's no French people. This is amazing. It's perfect," and stuff like that. And then you get 3 Parisians who have taken the wrong end of the stick in the comment, and then you have 2 people saying, "Well, your city smells of piss," and then you get and we kind of knew it would happen. You get the sort of immigration debate come in full force, a kind of travelling circus of the immigration debate come into the comments. And I don't touch it. It's not my problem. What people want to say to each other in my comments on my video, it's not my problem. So I haven't said it. And you have a look at it. There's some crazy stuff going on with them. And that has driven that video pretty big. I think it's at like 1.2, 1.3 mil now. So that's an interesting concept. And I am guilty of that because I have effectively harnessed people's toxicity online and argument, etc., for my own purposes to increase the view counts of a video. So is that morally reprehensible? Perhaps. Freedom of speech. It's an interesting thing.
In a weird way, you're becoming a platform for like discourse. Like these are opinions people
totally,
did or didn't have, and now you're kind of giving them a platform to do it. I'm always amazed by like what horrible things people say online, even on like recently on LinkedIn. Like I always thought, what if you create a social media where you have people's names? Like surely then, like
and the companies they work at,
and they just say the most outrageous. Like people just say horrible things online.
Really?
Like for everything I said 5-10 minutes ago about like freedom of speech and not cancelling people, like I am still a big believer in like be kind to people. Like you can have your opinion.
Obviously, yeah.
People are just like horrendous online. I wanted to ask you like one last bigger topic before a few like small ones to close out. And you've touched on it a little bit with regard to China, but how have you found generally like posting content in China? How have your views of China changed over time, having gone there and traveled around the country for an extended period of time? And is there any like content that you would seek not to make because you're in China? And does that level of like don't do this differ at all from being in the US or the UK?
The level of don't do this and don't do that does differ. It's now the lines are increasingly blurred based on things I'm seeing on the news about stuff going on in the UK, particularly stuff going on in the US. Sort of Norwegian students getting deported for having a meme of JD Vance. There are things I won't touch on or won't investigate deeply because it causes me problems. It causes real BBC journalists problems. So, this is not what I will say. This is not a perfect place. Nowhere on earth is. I have been left with overall a pretty positive impression of this country because whatever people say, I'm about the least communist person you'll ever meet, by the way. But whatever people say about the government's level of control and surveillance, and it's not particularly controversial. You go out and you're being looked at by 6 cameras at all times. That's not good.
What do you mean you're looked at by 6 cameras?
Well, there's security cameras all over the place. It's actually not too dissimilar from London, apart from they're all connected to one grid, and hooked up to one system where presumably if you need to be found by the powers that be, you are instantly. So there's that. The flip side of that is that it's incredibly safe. Do not worry about, for example, my female friends walking home from a nightclub on their own at 4 in the morning. It literally doesn't cross my mind that something would go wrong. Or things like, oh, people don't own their land and this person had to vacate their property of 50 years and move to a different village because they were building high-speed rail, for example. Now, for that one person, that's not ideal, but from a utilitarian standpoint, a family of 5 has had to move. They've been moved into an equivalent house and paid the compensation equivalent to the value of the house. So they've been well compensated, and now another 10 million people have access to a high-speed rail station and can get across the country in a quarter of the time, and that's created maybe 500 local jobs in the economy. There is an element of they really get stuff done here, and there's often small prices to pay, or large prices to pay. I find it funny that the UK is increasingly becoming a surveillance state, and yet we're still not building railways.
Yeah.
You'd like to think, this is the thing with China, they're so efficient that you look at it and you're like, well, one naturally comes with the other. If you had that level of control and you're able to monitor what people did online, you'd also be able to build high-speed rail all over the place. No, it's not a given. And I would say, just really important point, the media in the UK has a very negative view of this place. The regular people you meet on the street in China are the nicest people and often the most joyous people I've ever met. Genuinely so welcoming, so curious, so funny. Even if there's a language barrier, I'm lucky enough that I can speak enough Chinese now. I can crack the occasional joke, or if someone's offering me a cigarette or a conversation. Last night I had a 20-minute conversation with my cab driver about the Premier League. It was great in Chinese, and that's also very rewarding for me, just being able to connect in that language. But yeah, the people here are lovely, and I think in the UK we have a funny view of the outdated view of the Chinese, where sometimes they can come across rude. And actually, it's a language barrier thing because the etiquette is very different. They're very polite in a completely different way. They have their own etiquette. We do things on a daily basis in the UK that they think, oh my God, look at these savages. And so then they come. But for example, in China, you don't say please to the waiter and you don't really say thank you. And that's fine. Here, I say thank you still because I'm British, so I just incorporated it into my Chinese. I can't get over that. I think it's right, but I'm not gonna hold it. You say, as you're in a restaurant, say, 服务员, 再来2个啤酒, and say, oh, waiter, bring 2 more beers. That's polite. That's what you say. But then obviously when that translates to a UK context, you think like, who are these people who are just demanding, have no manners? So that's really interesting. I think it's a misunderstood place, and you'll never be able to know what it's like until you come here. So I'd recommend people to come here. Actually, I'm not being paid by the Shanghai government or whatever. I wish I were.
Yeah, not yet. If I was to ask someone in 100 years' time, how would you want to be described and what would you want your legacy to be?
I think a couple of things. I think I would like to be known as someone who is nice to people and good to people. That's important to me. I like to think that, I want to be just known as, someone who's good to his friends, good to his family, and then also someone who, went out and got what they wanted and went to very different places and connected with people who'd grown up in such a different situation to him. This is what I mean. I think the content means something to me, but to be honest, inherently it doesn't mean anything to me. It's more about this is a vessel that can get me from a couple of uni summers to I'm in a stage in 2 years. I mean, I haven't got anything to do next month. Let's go to Kyrgyzstan, or let's go to Western Mongolia, or I don't know, I'm going to go into the desert in Yemen. I don't know. That's the dream. So yeah, someone who was empathetic and saw as much of this incredible Earth as possible. Sod Elon Musk's idea of Mars. We haven't run out of stuff to do here, nearly.
And my penultimate question And I think you've kind of answered this question already. And maybe you can answer this question more towards your personal life, but also with regard to the channel. What's next for you?
What's next for me? YouTube, broadly. Monetizing all this, traveling more, seeing more places, improving my Chinese, scaling everything up, me taking on more responsibilities and being more tired. But broadly with the channel, monetizing it to make it sustainable long term, which will come with making better videos that are 25 minutes long, say, on YouTube, which I'm starting to do now, getting monetized on there. Personally, I don't know, I'm here till June and I'm back to the UK for a year. I need to have a serious think about what I do when I go to Edinburgh for a year. If I have potentially 150, 200,000 people who are rather keen to see me gallivanting in China or the Far East every day. There's all sorts on the horizon. It's an exciting time. I'm healthy. I've found a got good people. I'm very happy with my place.
And my final question, I ask this to every guest on Personable, is what is one thing that you would want a listener to take away from this episode?
One thing, get off the beaten track. And I mean that in two ways. In one way, literally physically go to places that other people aren't going to. Whether that is a completely random town or a random spot of your town that you've never been to, or if you have a bit of cash and are fortunate enough to have a bit of time, you want to travel, don't go to somewhere that you've seen 20 people from your school, office, social circle go to in the last year. Go somewhere really random. I mean, almost throw a dart at a map, or go somewhere you've seen in a film and you'll have an amazing time. And in a less kind of physical sense, do your own thing and really believe in what you enjoy doing and do it without worrying about anyone else's perceptions initially. Because A, you'll find your people through the internet, because now you have a village all over the world that shares your interest. And B, people will cease to take the piss if you start to make a real success of that. Yeah.
I really like the now you'll have a village all over the world that can, help you on your journey. I feel like I've learned a tremendous amount on Go. I really appreciated your simplicity in social media in that just create great videos. I'm sure if I asked Mr. Beast, not to compare you to Mr. Beast, I mean, yeah, we'll compare you to Mr. Beast. I'm sure he would say the exact same thing of just create great videos. And I think that there's simplicity in knowing that create the best thing you can, because I think myself and so many people often overcomplicate it. I admire your honesty about, your views on China and what it's really like, but also giving honesty as to, still about like the cameras and saying that no country's perfect. Because I think that, within a 10-second, 1-minute reel, if you're seeing someone post positively or negatively about country, it's very easy to frame their whole being over that.
Of course.
And I think that's something we've done. I called it the other day, I called it the TikTokification of like life, in which like we're kind of given a snippet of someone and we base their entire personality on. Like that old man with the beer, with the Jaeger, or the chefs with the, that's all we kind of see of them. And so I think it's that level of like added critical thinking that has been lost quite a lot, that we need to like reinvigorate into our lives.
That's why I'm trying to get into YouTube. That's the plan. Because I don't love making 20-second videos. I'd much rather make 20-minute ones where people get a more sense of who I am and I'm able to be slightly more intelligent.
Well, thank you for coming on the podcast today. It was a pleasure to have you on, Mungo.
Thank you very much for having me, Harvey.